Hello everyone, this is Sam. For today's video we're gonna be going over the new specialization that the ranger got, that is the Soulbeast. Throughout the video my goal is going to be to show to you what I think is going to be relevant on that specialization for raids and fractals, that is to say the most played instance PvE content at the moment in the game. The reason why I am going for Conditional Soulbeast instead of Power is because the Conditional Soulbeast outputs much more damage than the Power counterpart.
Weekend millionaires, just trying to be cool. Yeah, one day we'll be there, till Monday comes again. We're weekend millionaires.
Now, without further ado, let's have a look at the weapon skills, the traits, the skills, and finally, what we will do with it. So first of all, I think it is a good idea to have a look at the weapon skills. The dagger chain has 4 attacks and inflicts a lot of poison and bleeding. The second skill allows you to put 6 stacks of bleeding as well as 1 stack of poison, and finally the third attack allows you to gain self-quickness. As such, this attack is not something that you would be using. Indeed, it is the other classes in your raid or fractal group that are going to be giving you the boons. This will also be relevant for our choices of traits. Now, let's have a look at the traits. We are going to be going for Live Fast, Predator's Cunning, and Oppressive Superiority. The reason behind that is that the other traits are much less relevant and would be more of a use in PvP or World vs World. Leader of the Pack is actually one trait that could be useful at some point if you plan to use your Soulbeast as some sort of group damage support, so maybe for a Soulbeast replacing a Druid. However, we do not have a definite opinion on the matter yet, as this still needs to be tested in a raid scenario. The minor traits are also pretty good, especially twice as vicious. However, since we are going to be trying to cap our condition duration without taking this one into account, it has a very little impact on what is going to work in the end for you. You're basically only going to take the 5% damage increase as something that truly has some effect on your actual DPS output. Now, to go back to the gear that we are going to be using, finally, Ranger gear is back in the game. So we have a full set of Viper armor, donned with Nightmare and Trapper Rune with a ratio of 4:2, that's to say 4 Nightmare, 2 Trapper, and we're going to be using in all the armor, weapon and trinkets Malign infusions. For the weapons, we're also on full Viper, with the specificity of using Malice and Geomancy instead of the old Geomancy Earth. The reasoning behind using Geomancy above Earth is that you are not limited to a single target. That means that in fights with adds, you're gonna be able to get your bleeds on everything instead of them sometimes being lost on the adds instead of the boss. It is gonna be the same for the dagger and the torch, quite obviously. For the trinkets, everything is Viper as well, and with Malign infusions. For the utility skills, we're going to be using the same ones as the core Ranger condition build that was used before it got nerfed. The reasoning behind that is that the stances that are available to Soulbeast at the moment are highly irrelevant to a proper DPS output. However, one wolf pack could be remotely decent if you trade for it to be shared with your teammates. That would however mean playing the Soulbeast as some sort of group support for the damage instead as a pure DPS slot in itself. For all of the other traits, we're going to be using the same ones as the base condition ranger. The idea behind it is that while we are using Soulbeast, there is nothing else that is better to take than the other 2 trait lines. Some people were considering at some point using Beast Mastery, however, since we're not playing with an axe, it loses most of its shine, and it is much better to go for the trait lines that give you the damage increase on your conditions. As far as the rotation goes on Condition Soulbeast, it is something akin to what you would do on a base Condition Ranger. The only difference is that since you are not casting the third skill once you are on the X/Torch set, it means that you have to adapt your rotation just a teeny bit. However, it all feels like it flows naturally. The simple thing is, after swapping your weapons and getting the bonfire on the quick draw, you are going to be using the Dagger 2 before going for the Torch 4. The reasoning behind that is that the cooldown on the dagger will always be available slightly before the Torch 1 on subsequent attacks. That is very good for the build, as it will allow us to quickly swap weapon immediately after the second thrown torch. The reasoning behind the desire to have fast weapon swaps is that we want our Geomancy Sigil to proc as often as possible. Also, make sure that you always use your best damaging skill after a weapon swap due to the Quick Draw trait. It only reduces the cooldown of the first skill that is used after swapping weapons, so you want to get it on the Bonfire as well as on the Poison Volley. For every other skill you are going to be using, it has a very little impact in the order, but once again, try to get the dagger before the torch. As far as the pet merging goes, I would say that one thing would be pretty good to do in a raid scenario where people are organized on a voice communication software. The idea behind that is that you would want to have your sharpening stones as well as the bristleback precast available before entering the boss fight. When I am talking about the bristleback precast, I am talking specifically about the F2. This acts just the same as a sharpening stone. Once you cast both, you see that you have 30 seconds to leave that beast mode, swap the pets, get back into the other beast mode before the fight starts. Then, the 15 extra stacks of bleeding will be very useful for your opening burst. Now, the skills that you are going to be using when melding with your links are the following. You're going to be using the F2 for the extra bleed application and the F3 for the exact same reason. These two skills are to be fit after the weapon swaps are made and the Quick Draw has procced. The idea behind that is that if you are going to be casting your utility skills as well as the beast skills before focusing on the Quick Draw, you might just be missing it. Always focus on making sure that your big damaging skills land before going for anything else. Soulbeast is a class that is not really dependent on skill priority, however, Quick Draw should always be one. So as you can see now, I have chosen some specific buffs for this rotation. The idea behind it is that we are only going to be using the realistic buff and we're excluding the engineer one, as right now engineer is not able to deal significant damage and as such will probably not be chosen in a regular raid scenario. The food we're going to be using throughout the DPS rotation is going to be the Rare Veggie Pizza and the Toxic Focusing Crystal. These take us to 89% condition duration, which is exactly what we are looking for the DPS rotation. As I have said before, you will want to get your bristleback precast and then swap out your pets. Now, when you meld back with the links, you can start the rotation. As you can see, the damage output is very close to 36k damage. Now, the reason why it was not higher is because I am not using the engineer buff. On previous rotations that I have done with such a buff and a little bit more tryhardness in the rotation, I was able to reach a 39k opener burst and 38k throughout the rotation. Now, this was highly unrealistic as you would not have such buffs in a regular raid scenario. Now, as a conclusion, I would like to say that Soulbeast is definitely the best thing that has happened to Ranger ever since it got the Druid. We've been having a few nerfs to our damage in the last few patches, and even the trait reworks didn't manage to put Condition Ranger back in the meta. The only thing that is a little bit annoying is that if you want to play both Condition Soulbeast and Condition Druid, you are gonna need to have separate weapon and rune sets. The Rune of the Crate remains the best one to use on the Condition Druid, as well as weapons with Venom and smoldering sigils. The idea behind it is that on Druid you do not simply have enough condition duration as you would have on Soulbeast from using this trait. I hope that you guys have found this video entertaining and informative, and if you did so, please leave a comment, subscribe or like the video, and if you want to support me further, you can use one of the links in the description to help your friends get into Path of Fire as well. If you have any further questions, you're welcome to ask them in the comment section or get on our Discord in order to ask them directly to me on somewhere I can reply much more easily. I wish every single one of you some happy rotation trading and to have a lot of fun raiding as a Soulbeast.